The AIFC is the new global financial hub. It is the center with a high concentration of advanced technologies that applies contemporary methods of regulation based on English law and international arbitration rules. Watch the International Financial Center program to learn more. In today's episode, Islamic finance as an alternative to traditional banking. The market size of Islamic finance, prospects of Islamic financial instruments on the AIFC International Stock Exchange. The closure of European and American financial markets, as well as a constant turbulence in the economies of developed countries, forces Kazakhstan's top management to seek new sources of fundraising. A turn to the east is a new trend of the country's current economic policy. Although by now it was mainly perceived as an outlet to the markets of China to attract investment, however, Islamic finance is another promising direction for developing new financial markets. Kazakhstan is the first state in the post-Soviet space to begin work on adjusting the legislative base and creating legal conditions for the functioning of the Islamic finance. For the first time, a bill on Islamic finance was introduced in the Kazakh parliament in 2008, and on February 12, 2009, the country adopted the law which created opportunities for diversification, opening of the Islamic banks, Islamic investment funds, issuing of the Islamic securities, and developing new banking products. We have been leaders of the Islamic finance among the CIS countries as Kazakhstan has adopted the amendments to the legislative acts back in 2009. And in the year 2010, the first Islamic bank in the region was opened on the basis of an intergovernmental agreement between the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and the Republic of Kazakhstan. In 2012, the Development Bank of Kazakhstan has launched the first issuance of Islamic bond, Sukuk, in Kazakhstan. In general, Islamic financial institutions are an alternative to traditional banking business activities, functioning in compliance with Islamic economic principles. The main feature of the products, developed in accordance with the requirements of Islam, is the exclusion of elements banned by Sharia law. It includes the prohibition of usury and charging a loan interest, riba, asymmetry and uncertainty of information, gharar, speculation and gambling, maisir. In addition, it bans investing and earning income from prohibited commodities, the production and sale of pork, alcohol, and weapons, as well as immoral or ethically problematic activities such as prostitution, pornography, and gambling.
Islamic finance is based on three principles. It's interest-free, i.e., Islamic financial institutions do not get involved in interest. Number two, this is based on some contracts which are written very clearly. And number three, Islamic finance is not about gambling. So these three principles are adhered by Islamic financial institutions all over the world.
According to estimates from financial experts, the share of the Islamic financial market on a global scale this year will reach approximately $3 trillion. The wave of the primary public placements among Saudi companies and the platforms provided by the Dubai Islamic Financial Center contributes significantly to the movement of the Islamic capital market towards a 10 trillion mark, achievable in the long term. That is why one of the strategic directions of AIFC's activity is Islamic financing, in particular the development of Islamic banking and non-banking financial services, as well as the Islamic capital market.
Это инициатива президента по становлению Казахстана и Астаны, в частности, хабом исламского финансирования в нашем регионе.
This is the initiative of the president, the formation in Kazakhstan and in Astana in particular of the Center of Islamic Finance in our region. Islamic financing has a great growth potential not only in our region but throughout the world. The Islamic finance assets account for 1% of the world's financial industry. A two-digit growth of Islamic financing indicates that this market has a great development potential in Kazakhstan.
Этот рынок будет сильно развиваться.
The growing popularity of Islamic finance in Kazakhstan can be explained by the intention of the Muslim community of the country to follow the trend of ethical finance. According to experts, AIFC has all the necessary resources to become a regional Islamic financial center for the countries of CIS and Central Asia. Also, AIFC should become a new place for the localization of Islamic financial institutions.
I really do think that not only in Kazakhstan but in the region there is a need to develop a financial market, set of financial services, capital markets, Islamic finance, new kinds of fintech regulations and fintech innovations. And all of this is a set of activities that need to be developed, which could help these economies grow better, be better connected with the rest of the world.
Islamic finance can help Kazakhstan gain access to a new class of investors who seek to purchase products that comply with the Sharia standards. Issuing sukuk bonds, which are domiciled not in the countries that are members of the Gulf Cooperation Council or in Malaysia, stimulates considerable interest among investors from the Middle East and Asia, who constitute about 60% of all investors in these instruments.
Имеется огромный спрос. Это не только спрос со стороны.
There is a huge demand. This is not only demand from the Muslim population. For example, in Malaysia and the United Kingdom, Islamic finances are used by people of various regions. For example, in Malaysia, 40% of Islamic finance customers are Chinese. It is no secret that the stock markets of many countries are currently experiencing difficulties associated with the reduction in the amount of the free cash flow, restriction on the number of participants in the stock market, and instability of individual players' activity in world exchanges. In this situation, the Islamic stock market, which represents about 200 to 250 Muslim funds that are actively investing in international stocks and bonds, certainly attracts attention. Because Sharia prohibits usury, traditional fixed income bonds are unacceptable within the Islamic finance framework. Sukuk offers a solution by providing a non-guaranteed income that comes from the profit of the funded event. In the classical period of Islam, sukuk, close in meaning to the European check, meant any documented treaty or the transfer of rights, obligations, or funds obtained in accordance with the Sharia. Despite the fact that investors often translate sukuk as an Islamic bond, in contrast to European securities, sukuk profitability depends on the return from the use of the allocated assets, services, or activities of the financed project.
When we say Islamic finance is interest-free, it doesn't mean that the shareholders of Islamic financial institutions don't make money. They make money in ethical and Sharia-compliant ways. This is why a number of institutions in the West, they are interested in Islamic finance because this is ethical. And this ethical dimension is becoming more and more interesting in these markets. So there is a clear cooperation going on between ethical movement in finance and Islamic finance.
Before the issuance of sukuk, the Islamic financial product line could not provide a product that could be traded on the secondary market. Sukuk is an ideal instrument from the point of view of Islamic investors because it has a share in real assets, can be traded on the secondary market, and it is not direct debt, and sovereign issuers and companies whose activities do not contradict with the Sharia rules may be issuers of sukuk.
С Министерством финансов мы работаем над...
With the Ministry of Finance, we are working on preparing the release of the first debut sovereign sukuk in the region. Now the preparatory work is underway, and in the first quarter of the next year, the debut sovereign sukuk in the region is planned to be released.
Суверенный сукук в регионе.
Opinions on the legitimacy of the securities market from the position of Sharia in Muslim society are divided. Some scholars deny the possibility of introducing securities market since it is alien to Islam. Others, on the contrary, understand the importance of this institution for the development of the economy and strongly support the introduction and development of the securities market, since the main role of this market, business financing by sending funds from organizations that have surplus funds to organizations lacking them, does not contradict the principles of Islam. Currently, stock exchanges are allowed in Muslim countries, but this does not mean that the methods of trade are consistent with the principles of Sharia, just as the fact that commercial banks exist in most Muslim countries does not at all indicate support for low interest on the part of Islam. Selection of Sharia-compliant securities for further work with them in different countries is carried out by various bodies. For example, in Malaysia, this activity is carried out by the central bank. in others by a private organization. Since the late 1990s, a number of special stock indices are calculated: Dow Jones Islamic Indices, World, American, European, British, Technological and Small Companies Index. In 2006, a new Islamic index was created for the BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India and China.
Большой интерес проявляют участники, поэтому мы думаем, вот в ближайшем около десятка компаний в сфере исламского
The
финансирования.
participants show great interest in the AIFC, so we think about 10 companies in the field of Islamic finance will come in during the next year. We signed about 20 memorandums in the field of Islamic finance. Now we are also working on the regulatory framework. As the first project will be ready, we will begin to share with potential market participants.
Проект готов, мы будем делиться с участниками рынка.
While Islamic banks can operate with ordinary shares, yet they cannot purchase the preference shares. This is because the preference shares are linked to a fixed dividend, which is prohibited by the Sharia law. However, as an alternative, Muslim scholars suggested that preference shares could be issued using the concept of dividend rights based on a share of profits. Due to the fact that only the share of profits is specified and not the amount of fixed payment, the existence of preference shares based on this concept does not contradict the Sharia law, according to Manan, 1990. This simply means that the owner of preference share does not know the amount of annual dividends that will be received, and such amount is based on the profits received by the company. In this way, large profits will turn into high dividends for the shareholders.
Сукук, он интересен для всех, потому что это, во-первых, диверсификация.
The great interest to the AIFC side is expressed in terms of opening representative offices by businesses, banking groups, financial and non-financial organizations that consult in the field of Islamic finance. They show great interest in entering our market, CIS market, and further through the AIFC side.
Для того, кто привлекает средства на внешних рынках.
In order to create more favorable conditions for the issuance of sukuk, the AIFC has established a special department that specializes in the promotion of Islamic securities and Islamic investment. At the present moment, there are no legislative or any other barriers to the issue of Islamic securities in the country, since a benchmark has been already created. Of course, for Kazakhstan, the sukuk market can be interesting in terms of diversifying the flow of investment and Kazakhstan's integration into the global financial community, as well as strengthening Almaty's position as a regional financial center.
Если рассматривать концепцию развития финансового сектора Казахстана до 30-го года.
In the prospect of 2030 development plan for Kazakhstan by 2020, the Islamic finance sector is expected to reach 3.5% of all assets. Right now, we are developing a roadmap for the Islamic finance development for AIFC and Kazakhstan, and we hope that a similar roadmap can be created for the whole region. Speaking about Kazakhstan, the goal for Islamic finance by 2025 should reach 10% of all assets. The sukuk market is developing fast and both investors and issuers are really interested. Sukuk proved its viability as an alternative means of attracting medium and long-term investments and savings for a vast investor base. Experts predict that this segment of Islamic finance in the next 10 to 20 years is likely to take a tangible share in the global financial market. In this regard, a number of European countries, foreseeing this scenario, are interested in its development and are making every effort to firmly strengthen their positions in this market. Kazakhstan, thanks to the development of the Astana International Financial Center, also does not stand aside.
В рамках работы, подготовительной работы мы сейчас разрабатываем целый свод регуляторной базы по исламскому финансированию.
We are currently developing a whole set of regulation base. The work is conducted with technical assistance of the Asian Development Bank. We are planning to create an expert council. We also plan to implement the educational program. Over the past year, we have made great presentations in several countries in the Middle East.
В ряде стран, это такие на Ближнем Востоке.
The Islamic mutual stock market is one of the fastest growing areas of the global financial system. But compared to the overall stock industry as a whole, Islamic funds are still in their primary stage of growth and development, most of which exist less than a decade. but they are pretty diverse for the young industry. Therefore, according to experts, the work of AIFC in this direction will certainly be successful and promising.